Last week we were talking about Hebrews chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Now, we talked quite a bit about what was going on in that time period, of course, talking about why we have to pay closer attention. Why, as Christians, we should pay closer attention to our relationship with Christ, because we've been told since time immemorial, since the beginning, since the Old Testament, that we are seriously in need of God's grace. Now, God's grace has been fulfilled through Jesus Christ. His law has been fulfilled through Jesus Christ. What do we need to do? Do we need to cling to the law, or do we need to cling to Christ? According to the Bible and what we learn, we need to cling to Christ, because He, as being higher than the angels, is the one who has been prophesied to be the one to take the burden of sin from us. And so we have to be ready for that. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about how we can not neglect so great a salvation. And reading chapter 2, verses 5 to 9, it reads here, Hebrews chapter 2, verses 5 through 9. For it was not to angels that God subjected the world to come, of which we are speaking. It has been testified somewhere, what is man, that you are mindful of him, or the Son of Man, that you care for him? You made him for a little while lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor, putting everything in subjection under his feet. Now, in putting everything in subjection to him, he left nothing outside his control. At present, we do not yet see everything in subjection to him. But we see him who for a little while was made lower than the angels, namely Jesus, crowned with glory and honor because of the suffering of death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. I always like how Hebrews digs into this. It's so powerful when you put it into perspective. When you read it in there and you really read this and you read it over and over and over, and you read those words and you talk about how Jesus died. I love that verse 9 there, because he suffered because of the death he suffered, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. So we don't have to worry about death. We don't have to worry about dying. Remember, in Hebrews 2, 1 through 4, the teacher turns to a word of exhortation, telling the audience that they must pay closer attention to what they have heard so they won't drift away. God has spoken to us by his Son, who is enthroned and sustains all things by his powerful word. And now he returns to that in verse 5 when he says, For he has not subjected to angels the world to come that we are talking about. The writer spent a whole lot of chapter 1 talking about angels, didn't he? He talked about how angels were big to do, and how a lot of people looked at these angels and got scared of these angels. And these angels came down during time periods and time immemorial and sent the message out, just like they did with Moses, just like they did with Job, just like they did with all these other, just like angels all appeared to each of these prophets and proclaimed the gospel message that was to come, that there would be one who would come to fulfill the promise of God. It confirms that as glorious as angels are, they are not as glorious as Jesus. Angels are ministering spirits sent out to serve those who are going to inherit salvation, according to verse 14 of chapter 1. They are sent out to send a message to those people that are going to receive salvation. Isn't that interesting? That's what angels are for. They're not going to receive salvation. Why? Because if they are serving God, they're serving God. Now, a lot of people like to put angels up here on a high podium, because angels currently in our state right now are higher than we are. But what does this chapter say? This chapter goes and says, look, Jesus came down here, was made lower than the angels. Why? Because he became like us. He became flesh and bone like us. Does that mean that Jesus was not fully God? Absolutely not. He was fully God, but being fully human as well, he subjected himself, he placed himself on a lower level than the angels. Realize what a sacrifice that is? Let's put it this way. Let's put this in modern terms. You like eating, who here likes eating steak? Now, y'all be honest. How many of y'all like eating steak? I know I like eating steak. I like a good steak. If you've ever ate a really, really, really good steak, you know, one of them that's seared at 500 degrees, flipped right over. I'm not talking about these cooked all the way through, burnt inside and out. I'm not talking about shoe leather. I'm talking about those that got that little bit of pink right there in the middle, just to make it so tasty. You know what I'm... Yes. Wouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, mercy sakes. I know. I feel you. I know. If candy don't taste like a steak, well, we can use that as a comparison. You know, candy's pretty good from time to time, ain't it? It's good to hold you over or have something in your mouth when you got to have something in there to kind of keep your mind occupied doing things like that. Or if you're sitting there and you got a bad taste in your mouth and you want to get that bad taste in your mouth, you put that piece of candy in there and you're good, right? Yeah, but you don't want to eat candy all the time, do you? Nah, of course you don't. You want a steak every now and again, right? You want you want that steak, you want that sizzle, you want that taste. Jesus is the steak with the sizzle. I know that sounds crazy, guys. I know, Robbie, you're simplifying this too much. Maybe I am simplifying it too much, but let me tell you just how good Jesus is. Jesus is better than any sirloin, any Wagyu beef, anything that you get on a plate here on this planet. He is better than that. He is better than that. But you know what he did? You know why he's better than that? Because he came down and became like us. We're candy. I mean, honest truth. We're here for a little while. We hold things over for a little while we're here. We don't last long, do we? And candy doesn't last long in our stomach, does it? We eat it and we're like, man, I'm really hungry again. It don't last long. It's not like steak. Steak's filling. Steak, man, I could eat a steak and I won't want to eat again for a little while. I got a good steak and good baked potato and all that. I know I'm going to talk again. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sitting there thinking about food myself. But you think about that. Jesus stepped out of heaven. Jesus, as Philippians 2 talks about, Philippians chapter 2 talks about, Jesus not going and putting his position as God as something to be, that's something, he was subject to. He was God. He was at the right hand of God. He did not want to see mankind die. So he stepped out of that role. He stepped down out of heaven, putting himself down lower than the angels. He became candy like you and I. He became temporary like you and I. Flesh and bone like you and I. And God elevated him after he went and sacrificed himself and gave himself once and for all, dying for us. God put him back up there where he belonged, at his right hand. Now, Jesus could have come down to this world and tore the place up. He could have sent down 12 legions of angels and burned this place to the ground. And God would have said, okay, that's fine. They don't deserve it. But do you know what? Jesus didn't want that, and God didn't want that. This has been the plan since day one, since we fell short. But God loves his creation so much. God loves his people so much. He doesn't want them to have candy. He doesn't want them to have the sweets and the sugar and to just last for a little bit. Oh, no, no. He wants you to have the sizzle. He wants you to have the steak. He wants you to be long-lasting, satisfied through and through. And that comes through Jesus Christ. Now, I know that sounds completely crazy, I know. But when you talk about food, I know people get understanding a lot better, especially when you're hungry. But that's the point. Candy won't hold you over. Jesus will. A good steak will. But Jesus is not just some temporary feeling of covering up your stomach and filling your stomach for a little bit. Oh, no, no, no. Just like he told the woman at the well, he's got that living water where if you come to him, you'll never go thirsty. You'll never be thirsty again. You'll never worry and you'll never hunger for truth, because truth is going to be provided to you. The food is there. This is the promise of God. And we go back into Hebrews 1:2, and we're looking at the phrase the last days. And that was the two ages that come to mind. The age when God made promises and the age when God would fulfill promises. A lot of people like to say there are 7 dispensations. I'm one to say there are 2. God's promises and God's fulfillment of promises. That age of the promises that were being made, and the new age we are living in today where promises are being kept. And he is acting in it. God is going to fulfill the promises in the Messianic age and the last days. Another term for this idea is used here in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 5, the world to come. There was the present age and the age to come. We don't know what's coming tomorrow, right? Now, I know that's... Some of y'all may remember. Y'all remember a guy that used to come around in these parts, and I love him. He was a good friend, and I love and pray for him still today. Y'all remember Leon? Y'all remember Leon that used to come, and he would go and say that the Lord's coming, he's coming, and he'd carry a cross, or y'all, I had a special place in my heart for Leon. I did. I know he had a hard time, and I know that drugs really had hurt him bad. So I had a very special place in my heart for Leon. So we would talk, and we would share, and we'd get into talking and discussing things. And he would talk to me about the day to come. And I was like, yep, the day's coming, Leon, the day's coming. And he'd start calling a date out, and I would, whoa.
I was going to say, he put a date out there.
I'd say, whoa, Leon. But that's the point. Now, guys, does that mean I go and I tell Leon you're going to hell because you're... No, you don't do that.
Show him where you made a mistake.
That's it. You're gentle with people. You're supposed to share with them and tell them, look, I can't say there's going to be a day because Jesus don't even know the day. If Jesus don't know the day, I sure don't know the day. Do I know how it's going to happen? Nope. Do I care how it's going to happen? Nope. I just know it's going to happen. Moreover, I know that the promise of God is that there will be a judgment, right? Good, bad. Sheep, goats, right? We know that. We have that promise. I don't care if there's 20 judgments. I don't care if we have to wait and come back and forth, if we go to heaven and we go right back down here, or what happens, because everybody's got 100 different ways of thinking about this. But I look at it in the most simple way possible, that God is going to take care of the promise that he has made of the age to come. Just like he says right here in Hebrews. Just like it says, going and saying, putting everything in subjection to him, he left nothing outside his control. At present, we do not yet see everything in subjection to him. We don't understand everything yet. We don't. Do I know how the world's going to end? No. Do I hold a newspaper up to the Bible and say, oh, this is it, this is the day? No. Don't. Because guess what they've been doing since Jesus left? That very thing. They've been holding their scrolls, they've been holding their newspapers, they've been holding all sorts of tablets and everything else, saying, this looks like it could be the day. This looks like it's it. We've been saying that for 2,000 years. I don't care when the day is. It could be 10 minutes from now. If it be, let it be. Because it don't matter. The promise is going to be kept. Now, does that mean that we don't be prepared? Absolutely not. It means you better be prepared. And you better be telling people to be prepared. Just like what Jesus says in Matthew 25, talks about the Talks about the maids that are waiting. And he's got, wait, you got to have your oil. One goes back for the oil, what are they going to do? They're going to miss out, ain't they? And ultimately, that's why we have to be the ones to help them get the oil now. We should be the ones going out there and telling people, get your oil ready, get your wicks ready. It's coming. Jesus is coming. We don't know when. We don't know how. We don't have dates. But we best better be ready. Because if we're not ready, we're going to regret it. We're going to regret it. Because we don't know the hour of the time. The time of the Messiah was the time of the age to come, the world to come, and the ushering in of a new heaven and new earth. So the author says that the fullness of the Messianic age, the world to come, has not been subject to angels. This statement is asking the question, who is the world to come subjected to? Who's going to rule the new age that is to come in the fullness when Jesus restores all things? There's the glorious world to come, and the angels are not in charge of that world. So who is? Who's in charge of it? And who's going to rule the world to come? You know, and that's something we can think about for ourselves here when we're reading this piece of Scripture, right? We know who's in charge now, right? Who you expect to be in charge right now? Who's in charge? You guys? Jesus. Jesus is in charge. Christ is in charge right now. As much as the devil runs loose in this world, Jesus is still in control. So what do we do? Who's going to be in charge when it comes to that, when it comes to the end? Well, to show what's about to happen in the future, the author quotes Psalms 8. Psalms 8 praises the majesty of God. God has set his glory above the heavens and established strength. The psalmist declares in Psalms 8, 3 through 9, when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him? And the Son of Man that you care for him? Yet you have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with glory and honor. You have given him dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all the sheep and oxen, all the beasts of the field, the birds of the heaven, the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You notice that the psalm is rhetorically asking what humans are. What are humans in the scope and span of this entire universe? I get that a lot, too, from people. Do you really believe that human beings are the only life forms on the planet or on the face of this universe? No. I don't. I think we're the only intelligent ones. Semi-intelligent ones, I'll put it that way. Because we sure ain't intelligent sometimes. I believe you're going to find bacteria somewhere in space. Sure. I believe you might find somewhere in the vastness of oceans of moons and stars and planets, I believe that you'll probably find some bacteria or some little lower life form organism growing. But guess what you won't find? You won't find something with a soul. Do you know why? Because that's what God made us. Now that doesn't mean I can't say what God's created and what he hasn't created. But he's got a special place for humanity, doesn't he? He's got a very special place for humanity. Why would he care so much about us? You're on the money. We're in his image. And that's why God loves us as much as he does. He has a fellowship with us because we, in enmity with us, he wants to have that relationship with us. He wants to have that love with us, that relationship with us, because we're made in his image. Exactly, Tarpon. We are made in his image. And if we are made in His image, then we need to realize why God remembers them. When you look at all the stars in the sky, all the work of God, whether it's the moon, the stars, we're so small. We're a speck in the vast universe. I remember when I was a kid, around 19, what was it? When did that pass? When did Voyager 2 pass Neptune? 1989, I think it was. 1989, 1991, somewhere in there. The big news on TV was that Voyager 2 was going past Neptune and was taking its last picture of Earth. And they turned the camera to Earth, and there's this one tiny pixel in the picture. This tiny blue pixel. And that was us. A dot smaller than this little dot right here where Tarpon is. That little dot up at the top there. It's smaller than that to you. Oh, I'd have to have some glasses to see that, wouldn't you? But that's what the Earth was. Tiny blue dot. And that's what Sagan called it. Carl Sagan referred to that little blue dot. That tiny blue dot, that tiny oasis in the vastness of black. Yeah. That was us. So little. How small we are. The more scientific knowledge we gain, the more we see just how small we are. We are so small when we look at the heavens, when we look at the universe. The focus is on what God has done to humans. The phrase Son of Man does not mean anything more than humans or mortals in Hebrew. We have seen this in Ezekiel, where God constantly refers to Ezekiel as Son of Man. It is a contrast of the divine, immortal God and the mortality of people. When you read the Son of Man is a temporary condition. The Son of Man is a temporary condition. Because guess what? If you're called a Son of Man, what's going to happen to you? Even if your name is Jesus, what happens to you? If you're human, fully human, you're going to die. You're going to die. What if you're a son of God? What if you're a son of God? Will you die? No. And that's the greatness of being a joint heir with Jesus, to be connected with Christ. And that's why Hebrews is saying this is so important. Notice that the psalmist continues to say, you have made humans for a little while, lower than the angels, but you have crowned them with glory and honor. You have put everything in subjection to them. The psalmist is amazed about the rule that God has given to humans over the earth. What did God do when we've studied Genesis in here before? What did God do when He created man? What did He say? What did He give man control of? Everything. You got it all. You have dominion over all the living things. You have control over all the living things. And as you read the rest of Psalms 8, you can see the description that refers to God's intention as expressed in Genesis 1, 26 to 28. Humans were created, Tarpon, in what? You said it a minute ago.
God's image.
Yeah. Once, you're appointed to die. Mankind is appointed to die at some point, ain't it?
Your body dies.
Yeah, your body dies, your spirit don't. Exactly. And as a son of God, we have that promise. And then the judgment. That's right. No, I'm sorry. I mean, you're sitting there thinking and pondering, But I can see those wheels turning. I can see those wheels turning in there.
That's what you said a while ago. You need,
Yeah.
you know, if you're changed, if you haven't accepted Jesus and being baptized and being saved, you better be doing it. But once you die, you're going to be judged.
That's it.
It's too late then.
It's done. That's right. That's why being
You
a
don't
son.
get to come back.
That's it. That's why being a son of man is so hard. Because the Son of Man is appointed to die. The Son of Man, mankind, is set to die. And then the judgment. Now, as was said in Genesis chapter 1, we talked about that a minute ago, didn't we, Tarbin? We said, what was that? We were made in what? In His image, right? And God said, let us make man in our image. In our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and and over the livestock and all over the earth and over all the creeping things that creep on the earth. So God made man in His image. And in the image of God He created him. Male and female He created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. To have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. All things were put under the rule of humans. The writer of Hebrews confirms this in Hebrews 2:8. For in subjecting everything to Him, He has left nothing that is not subjected to Him. But remember that the writer of Hebrews is making the point that it is not the angels that would come to be subjected. He quotes Psalm 8 to show that the world to come has been subjected to us, to humans. Now we immediately have a problem because it certainly does not look like we're ruling the world, are we? The writer of Hebrews agrees with that. Look at the rest of the verse 8. As it is, we do not yet see everything subjected to Him. Why do we not see this yet? We can go back to Genesis for that answer. Human sin has wrecked the dominion we are to exercise over the world. Sin has separated us. Sin has divided us. So we do not see this rule that has been given to us for the world to come. So how do we have hope? How do we know that this is true? How can we possibly believe that the world to come has been subjected to us? Verse 9. We do not see our rule, but we do see who? Jesus. Look at verse 9 again. Look at verse 9. But we see Him who for a little while was made lower than the angels, namely Jesus. Okay? We see Him who was for a little while made lower than the angels. Fully human. Jesus was fully God and fully human. No matter how many people I hear say He was fully human, period. That's all they say. They say He was fully human. He didn't resurrect from the dead. He didn't. No. Jesus was fully God and fully human. Otherwise, He wouldn't have resurrected after 3 days and was seen repeatedly by over 200 people. Okay? Nothing is going to go and clear that out. Nothing is going to go against that. At present, we do not yet see everything in subjection to Him, but we see Him who for a little while was made lower than the angel, namely Jesus. After He's talking about man, now He's coming back and He's saying, let's look at Jesus here. Jesus was made like us, just like us, crowned with glory and honor because of the suffering of death, so that by the grace of God He might taste death for everyone. This is the parallel between Jesus and humanity. We see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels for a little while, being crowned with glory and honor because He tasted death for everyone. The example of Jesus becomes our proof. We have proof that there is something greater to live for. We have proof that there is something greater coming. that there is something outside what we consider nature. Supernatural. We've talked about this in the past too. We've talked about how in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, okay? Now, if you know anything about science, the first rule of thermodynamics is that matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from state to state. Matter cannot be created or destroyed in nature. So what can happen to bring about matter when there's no way matter can create itself? How can it be created? Something has to come in outside of nature. Something supernatural. That's supernatural. And I hear people, every time I say the word supernatural, people go, I don't like that word. And the reason people don't like that word is because when they hear the word supernatural today, they think ghosts. Yeah. Everybody thinks, oh, ghosts, demons. Well, yeah, demons, yeah. That's supernatural too. So are angels. So is God. God is supernatural. God is outside. That's what supernatural means. The word super meaning above. Natural meaning what is around us. Above that which is around us. Above. It means outside of nature. Something that can't be explained by nature. The causal cause of everything is God. The reason that there's matter in this universe is because of God. And for people to go and say, well, the universe has never had a beginning point. It's always been. I love it when people tell me that one. So you're telling me that God's real then? Well, how am I telling you that God's real? That's easy. Because the very same argument you're using to tell me that God isn't real, you're using to say the universe has always been. You're going and saying the same thing. You're saying, well, the universe has always been. God has always been. God doesn't have a beginning or end. He is outside of time and space. He is outside all the walls that we make in nature. God is outside and existing outside of that. And so is Christ. That is why when we read in the book of Genesis, let us make man in our image. Let us go and give him dominion over all things. Because he created all these things for us. So we would be looking at the stars one night. So we'd be looking at the moon. So we'd be looking at the sun. Don't look at the sun directly, though, because you'll go blind. So don't do that. But you go and you look at all the things in this world. And all the greatness of this universe. And you look and you realize God's real. He's very real. Because guess what the laws of nature say? The laws of nature say you can't create matter. That's the first rule of thermodynamics. You can't create matter. It can't be created or destroyed. But do you know what the second law of thermodynamics says? Everything decays. Everything gradually gets worse. Everything gradually deteriorates over time. I got a question for you. Are you the same today as you were when you were 20 years old?
I think I'm deteriorating.
Boy, yeah, I have. I was looking at a picture today. Girls at work said, why don't you scan a picture? Everybody scan a picture or send a picture, post a picture. All these girls are younger than I am. They're in their 20s and 30s. There's a couple of us that are in our 40s and 50s. A couple of us. And they said, post a picture from your high school graduation or your senior year. We're going to celebrate this because everybody's getting out of school today here in Greene County. I posted a picture of me from back when I was a senior in high school. Do you know how much I weighed in high school? About that much. 115 pounds. I weighed 115 pounds when I was in high school. 115 pounds. I was a little bitty old dude, man. I was a little bitty old guy. And I weighed 115 pounds. There was there ain't nothing there. There wasn't enough there. But do you know something? I was also a lot more energetic then. I had a lot more energy to burn. I could eat a box of donuts and not look at it, not think about it. I could eat an entire box. I know it. See? Yeah, that's how it's been. Well, I mean, I sat there and I did. I'd be wanting I'd eat a box of Krispy Kremes in a day and never think a word about it. Now, if I eat 2, I've done gained 30 pounds. Yes, my body is deteriorating. My knees are getting old. My body is falling apart. Why? Because the second law of thermodynamics says entropy, the deterioration of all matter. Eventually, matter starts to deteriorate over time. That's right, even the Krispy Kremes. Yes. Same way. Mercy sakes. And if you leave something, and yeah, I noticed that it's gone, Tarpon. The communion cup's gone. Why is that? Why do you take the communion downstairs on Sunday afternoon? It deteriorates too, that's right. What happens if we come back here next Sunday and we open that up? There's going to be fuzz on top of that, ain't it? That's right. Tarpon will always say, I got to get it before the fuzz gets it. And he's right. Eventually, things deteriorate. Happens over time. Now, let's go and apply everything in here. That we've got the example of Jesus being our proof. The example that God is outside of nature. That God overcomes everything. And that God is the writer and author of every promise, every good promise that we have. The writer of Hebrews takes Psalm 8 that was originally written about humans and applies it to Jesus, the Son of Man. Psalm 8 takes a whole new added meaning. Now we see the rule of Jesus that has been given to him over all creation. Jesus has come and established his rule and will continue to reign until all the enemies are put under his feet. You can cross-reference that in 1 Corinthians 15, 24 to 26. Look at verse 9 again. So that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. Notice that the cross is the grace of God for us. But consider that the author does not say that by tasting death our sins are forgiven. While this is certainly true, it is not the point at this moment. What Jesus did in the cross puts back in order the dominion over the world that we are to have, which we will experience in the fullness of the world to come. That's why we sing Family of God. You remember that song? I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God. I don't want to sing it too much because if I put the video on YouTube, they might put a restriction on it. Oh, you're singing a copyrighted song. Oh, that's stupid. But guess what the words say? The words say, join heirs with Jesus as we travel this side. That's from Hebrews. That by grace he might taste death for everyone. Jesus does what the first man, Adam, failed to do. This is presented to us as one of the reasons why our Lord had to become human in the first place. He became like us to fulfill what we could not do. He became, for a little while, lower than the angels by becoming human. But notice also the other big point in verse 9. The reason he was crowned with glory and honor was because he suffered death. Jesus was exalted because he went to the cross. Now remember what this letter is to do. It's encouraging Christians to hold fast and not give up, to endure. What's that word? Endure. That's right. To hold fast and not give up. to endure. How does this part of his message do that? Can you think about that for a minute? I want you to think about that for just a minute. How does this part of the message do that? How does this part of the message help us to see that we need to continue, that we need to endure? How can going and saying that Jesus has become exalted when he went to the cross, how can that motivate us to cling on longer? Ball's in your court. What? Give me a reason. What? There you go. That's it. That's part of it right there, ain't it? If Jesus was willing to endure it for us, we should be willing to endure for him, right? Remember that this letter is to encourage Christians to do that. There are two important keys that we need to see so that we will have the same spiritual strength not to give up. These 2 points come from verse 10. I want you to read verse 10 with me. For it was fitting that he, for whom and by whom all things exist, in bringing many sons to glory, should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering. First, humans are destined for glory and honor. Really? Yes. The writer of Hebrews does not look back at Psalm 8 with sadness, declaring how we ruined it all and lost everything. Rather, the writer uses Psalm 8 to show a preview of the paradise that is to come, the glory that is to come. He uses Psalm 8 to show that the promise still exists to us because Jesus followed what the psalmist pictured. Humans are lower than the angels for a little while, but in time, humans will be crowned with glory and honor. We do not see this glory and do not see the rule yet. But who do we see? Who do we see? Who do we see? Whose glory do we see? There you go. We see Jesus' glory, right? If we see Jesus' glory, we see that Jesus has traveled the painful route from lowliness to glory. By the grace of God, Jesus has tasted death so that we can be crowned with glory and honor in the age to come. And that is the point of the first half of verse 10. For it was fitting that he, for whom and by whom all things exist. Remember, God created everything, right? God stepped out of nature. He reached out from behind nature, above nature. He was supernatural. He went in above that and created all things and brought everything into existence in bringing many sons to glory. What was God doing? God is bringing us to glory. God is bringing humanity to glory, i.e., those who are Christians, those that are seeking his face. The world to come was not subjected to angels, but to us. And this leads to the second point of encouragement to us. For it was fitting that he should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering. What did Jesus tell us in Matthew chapter 5? Remember I told you all to underline it? We are to be what? Perfect. Perfect. I know that's a hard word for us to accept. And we aren't going to be perfect. We have to rely on God's grace every single day. But how do we strive for perfection? In him, right? We strive for perfection. Look at what verse 10 says again. That it is fitting that he should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering. Are you suffering today? Are you enduring today? Are you going through troubles today? Are you going through trials today? Are you hurting today? Are you feeling that pain and that groaning and all that going on in your life? When does exaltation come? It comes through suffering. We see Jesus. The point is not that Jesus was not perfect in some way or possessing some sort of flaw that needed correction through the cross. No, rather the goal was to bring all of us to glory through His suffering, through His perfect suffering, through being made perfect through the cross. And Jesus was perfect in God. He was perfectly God through and through. And He was willing to subject Himself as a human to death for us. The path to the crown was the cross. Jesus was crowned with glory and honor because He tasted death. This present suffering of the cross was the path for Jesus' exaltation. It is also the road that we take to gaining glory with Him. It is through the cross that we find hope, that we find glory, that we find truth and a purpose. Our path is the same path as Jesus. This is why we need to be kept near the cross. Jesus, keep me near the cross. Yes, please keep me near the cross. Our paths are on that same course. We are to carry our cross and follow Him. What are humans that the Lord remember? Where are humans that the Lord would remember us? What are we? We are the ones to whom God has subjected the world to come. We are the ones who become exalted because of the grace of God through Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ tasted death for each and every one of us. Do not give up because God has made you for His purpose. You have been sanctified. You are called saints. You're not going and you're not saved to sit. You're saved to be here and alive and being for Jesus. We are called to live and remain faithful even in the hard times because we see Jesus crowned with glory and honor because of the suffering of death. And that's what we can learn. That's what we can do. That's where we can go. That's what we can take from this. Guys, verse 10 says a lot to us. We have hope. We have glory. We can be made whole through the perfecter of our faith. And He was made perfect through what again? What made Jesus, what made the sacrifice? What did all that? That sacrifice of Jesus is what perfected our salvation. Because Jesus was perfect already. But that He was willing to step down lower than the angels for a time and die on the cross for us, that we may not know death, but we may know the glory of what we were originally called to be. We'll talk about the first Adam and the last Adam and things like that too. We talk about the first Adam being Adam who fell short, and the last Adam who is Jesus. Adam couldn't live up to it, but Jesus did. Adam fell short and died. Jesus died and brought glory. And that's who we have hope in. If we put hope in this world and this old flesh and body, we ain't going to get very far. But we have hope in Jesus. And that's the promise He gives us here in Hebrews chapter 2. Verses 5 to 10. Spend some time studying that this week and look ahead in chapter 2. Read on in chapter 2 and connect the dots. What we talked about tonight, what we're going to be talking about next week. Okay? Spend some time in this. Pray about it. Look at it. Read it a few times. Get involved in it. Bring your questions. Bring your answers. Let's dig into this. Let's really see what that says. And let this impact your life. All right? Because Hebrews is a good book, man. It's really good. And sometimes it can be a little confusing, but we'll get through it. We'll wade through it. And then when you wade through it, you start looking at it and you say, man, that's so simple. Why didn't I see that before? Man, I've read through Hebrews so many times. Because it's just, you find something new every time you dig. Find something new in it every single time. And guys, that's why we study together.
You think that when they say that an angel appears, that you think that in the Bible, that angels appear as a person or as what it looks like?
It could be one of, it could be both. I don't know. Because I always hear the words, do not be afraid. I always hear the words, do not be afraid. Of course, if I woke up in the middle of the night and saw some strange dude standing over me, I might say a few things too. I'd be like, whoa, wait a minute, who are you? Yeah. Yeah, that would probably scare me too. Hey, wait a minute, don't be afraid. And if you're anything like we are today, you know, if you were like my dad always had that gun loaded and ready to go right by the bed. He'd pull it right there. And I'm telling you right now, I'd say that's probably, don't shoot. Don't be afraid. But you never know. I don't know. Maybe they were human. Maybe, and that's the thing. You never know what an angel looks like. An angel could. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they could, and it's like I say, they were messengers. And how these angels look, I can't tell you. Now I know in our minds we put them as a human, and they may be human, because obviously you go into Sodom and Gomorrah, these guys were getting looked at pretty hard, weren't they? And they say, "Hey, look at those guys. Mm-hmm. Don't you bring them out here, Lot? You know, come on, bring them out here so we can meet them." Mm-hmm. You never know how you would react to them, what you will do, how you might be able to make a difference. What's Jesus say? Jesus says, and later on in the book, when we start studying this, we'll be talking about this, but I never fed you, I never clothed you, but you didn't. Yeah, you did clothe me. I was naked, and you did clothe me, and I was hungry, and you fed me. You never know who you're going to entreat.
Even after Jesus broke in the neck, he ate 4 fish and 2
But that's Jesus, right? Yeah. Jesus, and that proves Jesus was what? Fully human. Why? Because just like Steve and I are right now, our stomachs are about to eat our insides out because we're hungry. Jesus is human. Jesus is human, and he was hungry.
He come back human then.
He come back human.
He told that guy to thrust his hand in his side.
Yeah, he come back as a
If he
human.
wasn't real, why would he tell him to do that?
He was fully God and fully human. Angels are a little different than humans. Okay? They don't have. Angels are a little different than us because, and we're and lower on the scale in the eternal sense. And the reason being is because we have the Spirit of God and are made in His image. Angels aren't. Angels aren't.
If they really look like that picture, man,
Yeah. That's why I always say, don't be afraid. Yeah. Do not be amazed. Do not be afraid. Yeah, I'm going to be afraid. See that kind of thing flying around. All these eyes on it.
Well, that's why I was wondering, is that what they saw, you know? And or are they afraid, you know, because they've seen it. Abraham wasn't afraid when they came
I honestly can't wait to talk to these guys when we get into glory and understand it a little deeper and get in there. Yeah, I know you're going to ask about snakes with legs. I know. I want to see the snake with legs. I know. I feel you. I want to see it too. Don't worry, guys. We'll have, see, and that's the good news. We've got all eternity to ask those questions. We'll find out.
I think you're going to see it. We will have to ask nothing.
That's right. And you know what the good part is? We have that promise, guys. We have that promise. We're going to find out one day.